Communication Air.
Welcome to the Communication Air Podcast, episode 66, the Community Patch Notes episode of linear versus open world games. And to help us get through it, to help us discuss this, who knows much more about these types of games than definitely Cheesy, not me, I'm fine. We have
okay.
Nishquikpops. Nope, you ruined my intro. Welcome, Nishquik.
Thank you so much for having me. Also,
how did you get the name?
Oh, this is very good question. Wait, before I want to say anything, Cheesy's always right. But anyway, Nishquikpops. This is a very interesting story. So my full name, my actual first name is Nishant, and in high school, ages back, one of my friends just saw me in the hallway and pointed at me and said Nishquik. And I was like, what, like the chocolate milk? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, that's your new nickname now. And it just kind of came out of nowhere. So, and then after that, the rest of the year, that whole friend group just called me Nishquik. And then college, we stopped using that name. And then I just stopped using that moniker for a while. And then I started this YouTube channel and I had many names in mind, very stupid and silly names in mind. And then I always went back and I was like, hey, I remember that name, Nishquik. I'll use that as my moniker, but I want to talk about video games and movies and this and that. So I thought oh, pop culture.
Yeah.
I'll do something like pop culture. So I thought Nishquik Pops. And then initially I hated the name. I was like, I'm gonna change this. After a year, I'm gonna change it. If nothing works out, I'm gonna change it. And then a year passed and I just didn't change it, and then it stuck. And then a lot of my friends really liked it. They're like, hey, this is a pretty cool name. You can do a lot with it. And yeah, it stuck, and I haven't delved outside of video games for pop culture much. So it's Nishquik Pops for pop culture, but I am sticking to video games, which I'm fine with.
I thought that there was I figured that it was a Nisquik, right? That's the chocolate milk.
Yeah.
Do they have? I thought that they had pops. I thought they had frozen pops, and that's where it came from. But
I think they have a cereal. I don't know what else they have. I don't know if they have those freezy popsicle things or anything like that. I know they have milk and they have a cereal. But yeah, that's where it originated from. I'm not a fan of their stuff, but the Nishquik nickname is from years and years back. So I was like, yeah, I'll just bring that back. It sounds pretty cool.
Well, that's
nice.
Fun.
Well, for those that don't know you, tell the people what it is that you do on the internet.
Yeah, so my channel, Nishquikpops, is mostly dedicated to Nintendo and JRPGs. And lately this year, I've been delving more into the JRPG territory because Nintendo's good, but I haven't been delving into the 2024 releases as much as I was last year. But I still talk about Nintendo Switch 2, and I have this segment called Nishquik Talks, sort of like Nishquik Pops, but Nishquik Talks. That's where I talk a little bit about upcoming releases, 2024 releases, some rumors, leaks, Switch 2 speculation. And recently I did one where it's do I even need the Nintendo Switch 2 at launch? So those are some casual discussions along with my longer form JRPG reviews, analysis, theories. I talk a lot about Xenoblade Chronicles on the channel, so if you guys enjoy that series, definitely check me out. And yeah, I've been delving into other series like Final Fantasy and Tales of and Persona and stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I do. Oh, one other thing is me and my friend started a Xenoblade podcast called the Conduit Cast. So for you Xenoblade fans, you guys should check that out as well. So
that's is that for all the lore and different strategies in the game, or what's
we
the
haven't
podcast
done
about?
Gameplay stuff yet. Actually, we sort of have, but it's just general Xenoblade stuff. So yeah, lore, character stuff. Our first episode was kind of a joke episode where we're what if we cast a Xenoblade movie similar to the Mario movie cast, where we take A-list actors and put them in the roles. So that was fun. We talked about a really in-depth interview the director did recently. So that was our big second episode, which did significantly well. So we were pretty proud of that. And then our latest episode is what a potential Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition would look like if that ever happened. So that's a what if kind of thing. And then the next one is like a little bit of a teaser. It's like what the main message and theme of each of the games is and what that meant to us. So yeah, so that's gonna be exciting. I was particularly inspired by Zeldudes. If you guys know Zelda Master and Zeltic, they have their own Zelda podcast. So I was like, if they can do that on Zelda, and if other people have done like uh, franchise specific podcasts, we can do one on Xenoblade.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're gonna be talking about Xenoblade a lot probably with our conversation. But do you think that Xenoblade Chronicle X will come to Switch too?
Yes, because I have a few reasons why. So first of all, I was hoping it would come to Switch 1, so like all the games would be on Switch 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that Monolith Soft, Takahashi, a lot of the people working on these games just wanted to get that, as they call it, the Klaus saga. They wanted to have that finished. They wanted all three of these games out so that saga of this arc could be done. Because X doesn't really fit into that narrative. You could kind of squeeze it in there, but it doesn't smoothly fit in as well as 1, 2, and 3 do. So they wanted to get that narrative done and then move on to whatever else they're going to do. And their next like mainline Xenoblade game is not going to come for a very long time. Maybe like 2026 and beyond, I'm assuming.
Really? Wow.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So I think actually even longer than that, maybe 2028 and beyond. I wouldn't be surprised if we had to wait that long. But I feel like in that span of time, post Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed and whatever else, like Xenoblade 4, whatever it is, they
Mhm.
have the time to do an X Definitive Edition, the new IP, which is rumored, maybe even an X sequel if they have a chance to do that. But I think with the enhanced power of Switch 2, we can get a full-on Definitive Edition, which is akin to maybe a remake, because re-engineering the game for the Switch is not as easy as it seems because it needs a lot of like quality of life improvements, a lot of it just needs a whole huge overhaul, which I think if they save it for Switch 2, it's going to be a little bit easier and manageable for them. And yeah, I think it's coming because we have that gap and we have powerful hardware, so I'm optimistic on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a series that I've never really gotten into, but also I've never really tried. So I can't say that, I'm not that I don't like it. I just haven't. I don't know. I just need to give it a chance.
Yeah, the Nintendo Switch is the best place to play all of them except for
Cheesy's
X.
afraid of
Yeah.
waifus.
I'm not afraid of waifus. That wasn't it. Honestly, though, like having X out of the picture, I think is something that stops me just because I'm the type of person.
Do the
that
numbered
wants-
ones, you weirdo.
Well, but I want all the lore. Like I want to
Yeah,
play.
Oh
I'll
my
all
say
god.
this,
Oh my god.
no,
They're
no, I will say
90-hour
this.
games.
You don't need to play X. I was telling one of my other
Okay.
friends this, who's
Yeah.
very, very like stubborn about this. He knows that he doesn't need to play X, but he still wants to. So I'm lending him my Wii U and my copy of the game.
Wow.
But I will say, yeah, because
Oh,
I
you're not getting
really
that game
want to
back.
play
Yeah, or the console.
it. Yeah, we'll see about that. But I will tell you this. Like I said before, X doesn't like really smoothly fit into the narrative of the three games.
Hmm.
It could, but if you like pull some strings, do some retcons, then it may kind of fit. But the main story that is being told is Xenoblade 1, Xenoblade 2, Xenoblade 3, and their DLCs and epilogues and expansions. So if you don't play X, you're not missing out on anything at all.
Okay.
But if you do end up playing X in the future, you might see some things like, hey, this reminds me of that in this other game, and oh,
Mm.
this concept reminds me of this concept in that other Xenoblade game. So yeah.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny, are you you finished eating?
Yeah, so I was quiet there. You're welcome. I did mute my mic on like this end, so if you heard me chewing, hopefully the listeners didn't hear me chewing. But yeah, I was quiet, so you're welcome for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that never really happens. We just need to get you a plate of pierogies every podcast episode, and then we'll have you
Yeah,
silent.
you didn't even know what a pierogi was.
Not until this podcast. But anyway, Johnny, we're not talking about pierogies. We need to do some server maintenance,
We do
and then
need
we
to
will
do-
get into the topic at hand.
Yes. So make sure you leave reviews on Apple and Spotify, 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. We didn't get a new written one, but thanks for all the reviews that we've gotten so far. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Threads. I don't know.
YouTube.
YouTube, yeah, all that stuff. Also, follow me personally on all my channels: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Nintendo Powercast. Man, I'm everywhere.
It's been
Twitch.
3 days since he hasn't done anything famous, people. So
yeah,
he
I'm wearing.
really
You know,
needs-
I don't know if you know this, but I got to work with Mountain Dew. You know, I got to work with Mountain Dew
I
last
saw
week.
your sponsored short, and in that you had your hat off for the first time, and I was
I
like,
know.
"Whoa, Johnny, you go without a hat? Whoa!"
and he had bunny ears instead. That's why he
Then
always
I had
wears a
another
hat.
one. Well, no, so there
Yeah.
was two videos, like the pre-event one. I didn't wear a hat because like they told me I couldn't wear like branded stuff.
Yeah, no logos, no nothing.
But yeah, no. So I worked with Mountain Dew. You know, I'm wearing the hat they gave me today as Claptrap with Mountain Dews.
Cool. I heard about that on the last show. It sounded fun.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. Then I
that
came back to
was
work, like real life 9 to 5 work. I'm like, oh my god,
and there's no Mountain Dews at his office. Can you
there
believe
are
that?
no Mountain Dews. It's rough. Oh, but I've also been streaming again on YouTube. I've actually been doing vertical streams because it kind of works like TikTok, where they push it out to the like shorts feed if you do vertical, and I was getting like good viewership. So I think I'm gonna keep doing that.
I saw that you were streaming tonight, and you had like over 61 people watching you. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, good for him. That
He's
means I don't
famous.
need to watch. Like he's got
Wow.
enough people.
He made it. He made it. He already made it.
I've seen a few vertical streams, but then I have a tendency, like if I'm using YouTube Shorts, I just keep scrolling. So then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I scrolled away. I have to go back.
Yeah, that's how it usually works. I mean, I think the average watch time's like 40 seconds or something.
Yeah,
Of a-
makes sense.
But whatever. I'm trying to get to 100K. I mean, I got a while to go, so I'm gonna take every shortcut I can.
You're pretty close, right?
I'm at 44,000, so I'm almost halfway.
Okay.
We'll get there eventually. I just want that play button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the shorts though. I'm enjoying the skits where you're talking to Nintendo and always buying the games.
Yeah, that's my bread and butter. Also, I love throwing stuff in the trash.
and you're each Nintendo Switch for a different franchise.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's real too. Like that, I really do have one Switch for one franchise.
That's fun. You could get a Xenoblade Switch. There's no Xenoblade themed Switch, but there's enough Xenoblade games to have like a nice looking like home.
And I
menu.
have all the Xenoblade games. I haven't played like any of them, but you know, I have them all, and I have the
You played a bit of
DLCs.
3 though, right?
I did
From
play
what
a bit
I
of
remember.
3. Well, I mean, when I say a bit of 3, it's like 10 hours. So it's like
It's a decent.
one
it's a decent
hundredth
bit.
of that game.
I would say like maybe like 20%, a little bit less than 20%.
I did
So you made some good progress.
I did the whole merging thing.
Yeah.
Those
intro came-
cutscenes go hard though. They do go hard.
The choreography and the cutscenes for 3 is the best that they've ever been. I think the best that they've been was like X did a very good job with those. 2 did as well, but like 2 had some issues with like performance and like some animation stuff here and there. Overall it was good, but like 3 is just like high quality, like high budget animations, fight scenes, choreography, all that.
And then you have Pokemon next to it. Like,
Okay.
Oh, don't get me started on Pokemon.
Johnny, ask him the question
The
that we ask
question.
all of our guests.
Yes. I don't know if you know what the question is, but we always ask, do you prefer Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World?
I remember this. I would say Super Mario World.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
Boo!
go.
I will say this. I think 3 is better with its power-ups. Well, first of all, I will say I haven't played these games in ages, like very, very long time. But Mario World was, I think, the first Mario game that I like really played because my friend had the GBA version. He let me borrow it when we were little. So that was my first exposure to like 2D Mario before like New Super Mario Bros. On the Wii. I'm much younger. I didn't
Yeah,
grow up
I
with
could
like
tell.
but yeah, I played the GBA version, then I played it again on Wii Virtual Console. Had a newfound appreciation for it. This is a cool story. One of my roommates in college has the original on Super Nintendo, and one day he just came home from class and beat the game in like 20 minutes. I was like, whoa! I forgot all the cool like secrets and stuff you can do. So that's another thing I really like about
I
World.
beat Super Mario Bros. 1 in 6 minutes.
Yeah, with for NES
Yeah,
World
for the World
Championship.
Championships. Yeah. Cheesy's too afraid to share his times. So we have a DM group with me, N64 Josh and Nightcrawler, and Cheesy's in there too. And we're all playing World Championships, and Cheesy is not sharing his times because
Don't
he's,
you love
he's
how-
terrified.
Your
He's
letter grades?
terrified.
Yeah,
He has it.
it seems like
Don't
seems
lie.
like you
No
just
excuses.
you just want to tell people everything that I'm afraid of, and it's not even things that I think I have ever said.
Well, I haven't seen you post a time once, so you
No,
must
that's
be
true.
scared. You must be scared.
I haven't gone back to it since the first time I played it, and like,
Wow, you don't beat games. You didn't beat a game.
can you beat?
I mean, you
that
could clear
game?
all the
I guess
levels.
just like beat all the
Clear all the
levels.
Yeah,
challenges.
what constitutes rolling the credits on NES championships?
I don't know. I mean, I would think like if you clear all the levels, you don't have to get like
Okay,
S's on everything. But if you clear everything, I would count that as beating a game.
okay. I remember for Animal Crossing, my friend when he was playing it, he was like, "Oh, I'm rolling credits on Animal Crossing right now." I was like, "Oh, nice, you beat the game." And he was like, "No, I haven't. I haven't beat the game."
No, that counts. Credits count.
Yeah. No, but he was like, "I haven't like done half the stuff, like 75% of the stuff I want to do in this game."
It is kind of weird though, like now that you mention it with New Horizons specifically, I guess. Like credits do roll after you get KK Slider to perform in your town.
Yeah.
But you're right, like there's still so much that you can do, but
Yeah.
from like Nintendo's standpoint, I guess they were like, "No, you can quit after this."
Yeah. Of course, there's like a time in the game where like you will beat the main story, but there's always going to be so much more to do. Well, it
Right.
depends on the game.
That's
Depends on
true.
how like story focused it is or how like customizable it is. I mean, I think we'll be talking about that more.
I mean,
in
I
this
think you just kind of segued
Yeah.
into the topic, which is linear versus open world. And something that we discovered a lot of last week is that when it comes to linear games or open world games, like when it's story based, that's more focused towards linear than it is open world. Is that true? Well, I
Yes,
mean, we're talking
but
about someone who loves Xenoblade. Maybe that's wrong.
yeah, but I've also realized that, yeah, of course, Xenoblade is one example, but I haven't fully played a lot of these games, but maybe you guys have. What do you guys think of games like Witcher 3 and Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2? Because those games have much more of a focus and a
Mhm.
heavy emphasis on story, narrative, side quests, character progression, all that stuff,
Mhm.
similar to a Xenoblade game. But the areas are expansive. You can kind of go wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. But it's different from something like Breath of the Wild or Skyrim, where it's not as story focused. But correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys know more about these games than I do, because I only played like 2 hours of both of them on PC. So maybe I shouldn't be talking, but I I want to talk about something like that first, where the world is boundless. There is probably no um hurdles and roadblocks and like things gatekeeping you from other areas in the game, but there is still more of an emphasis on the story. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I played part of Red Dead 2 and Witcher 3, and I mean, there is a story, right? There is a set story that you need to go through, but it's like you go in any order. Like I don't think you have to. Like The Witcher, it tells you where to go, but I think
Mhm.
you don't have to go there like right away.
Yeah. You still have freedom to go wherever you want. Do like what are his things like those bounties and like odd jobs for what's the name Geralt to do. And then like yeah, those games I've known are like littered with a whole bunch of side quests, which gives you that kind of freedom to do whatever you want before tackling the main story. And then the main story might kind of like introduce you to a new area or take you to a new place. Um, Another example I think is like Ghost of Tsushima, but I'll say this about Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is a game where it linearly like progresses you like up towards like the top of the map or wherever. But I never like felt compelled to really go out of bounds and explore like I was playing like a Zelda game or even like a Xenoblade game. I would sometimes be like, "Oh, this thing is like happening over here. I'll do this over here. I'll do this over here." But I never went off the beaten path or like the actual like linear path in that game, even though that like I had the ability and the freedom to do so. So yeah, those are just a few options in which the open world is there. You can like
Hmm.
kind of go wherever you want, but the story focus is just as heavy as maybe other story focused games.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of made me realize. And in the last episode, I said that I prefer more linear games, and I still think that that is true because even with something like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, even though like yeah, it's not super like heavy on the story, but I still wanted to like do, figure out what the story was, and I would
Mhm.
do like a side quest here and there, but and maybe this is also just the internet too, like I don't want to get spoiled,
Yeah.
but I will focus on the story first because it's to
Okay.
me, it's like that is the main thing that you're not that you're supposed to do, but like that Nintendo
There's a story in
or
Breath of the Wild.
any developers. There's more of a story in Breath of the Wild, I think, than in Tears of the Kingdom.
We didn't get four of the same cutscenes.
Yeah,
Well, that's Tears of the
yeah,
Kingdom.
I will
yeah.
say, I kind of agree with you there, but that also is, I'm trying to think back to how I played Tears of the Kingdom because I remember with Breath of the Wild, I made it so that like that was like a breakthrough experience for me because I was like, oh, I never played an open world game like this before, and I was
Hmm.
exploring around, and I kind of saved a lot of the memories till the very end. So right when I was about to fight Ganon, I saw the final memory, and then went to fight Ganon, and then like the DLC after. For
Hmm.
Tears of the Kingdom, it was the complete opposite, where I was like focused on getting the memories immediately, and I did all the memories so I can like see all that stuff, not get spoiled. And as I was doing that, I was doing other like shrines and side quests and things like that. But I was so focused on getting those memories done.
Hmm.
Once I did that, the rest of the game just felt very different to me in the sense that like I've already done a lot of this stuff. I'm excited for more of the story scenes later on in terms of like the mandatory things that I have to do, like the dungeons and the boss fights and things like that. But that whole intrigue of the story kind of left me after seeing those memories. So that's why I like something like Xenoblade, where you're still exploring big areas,
Hmm.
but you like this goes for the numbered games, by the way, because X is a whole different story. I'll talk about that later. In Xenoblade 1, when you start off in like Colony 9, for example, you can't immediately go from Colony 9 to like Magna Forest, because to get there you have to experience many story beats before you are able to enter those new areas. And that really paces out the game better, because if I was able to go from like one area all the way to the other area, then it would just be like so much at once. I would have to like do so much more, like leveling up, grinding, whatever. And those games aren't as like content filled with the open world. It's still nice to explore, see a lot of the things going on, fight the enemies, like discover what's happening. But I like that the story paces you in that way, where you're like going from one area, you experience some story stuff, go to another area, experience some story stuff, and it's like that throughout the entirety of the game. So it's kind of like a balance. That's what I feel like I've been looking for in my open world experiences a lot more recently. I'll give more examples later, but I want to know what you guys think about that. That kind of balance between open world exploration and getting some of the story beats here and there.
Personally, I mean, I don't know how Johnny feels, but for me, like I think that is kind of what I'm wanting, because a lot of people will say open world games, they're just like there's nothing to do. Like
Mm,
it's so open that it feels boring. But if you were to have like a story tied to it, but also I don't know. We have someone in the YouTube, the name's Jer. This is kind of long, but says not to be semantics guy, but I'm hoping I can maybe clear up some confusion on this topic. I believe a lot of what you're referring to as open world games are actually sandbox games. Open
mm,
world is a pretty vague concept and really just refers to any game with a world that is free to be explored, whether during story or in between missions. Sandbox games are games that give you a set of mechanics, tools to play the game and accomplish tasks however you want within a world or multiple worlds that have minimal restrictions. Minecraft would be the ultimate example of that.
mm.
Like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Bethesda games, the Hitman series, and GTA, to an extent, all fit within that label. Open world games, on the other hand, can vary greatly. Some can be sandbox games, but others can be very linear, like the Horizon series, for example, which gives you an open world you can explore, but also has a very structured and focused narrative. Now, when it comes to linear games, typically what people are referring to with this label are games that restrict or limit exploration to the main story path and lock you out of previous sections while also requiring you to complete objectives to progress to the next sections. And like all of that sounds great. And they clearly did their research and were trying to help out. Honestly, though, it confuses me even more
Yeah,
because, like, I don't think there should be a such thing as open world games. Then, like
yeah,
sandbox game, I kind of get
Well,
because
I understand what like so sand when you hear the sandbox games, I think of
playing in the
excuse
sand.
me. No. I think of
Oh,
like Minecraft or like Halo or games that they just kind of plop you in to a giant sandbox and
uh huh.
let you do whatever you want. Open world games with a more linear structure, you have to do story beats in order to progress to new areas. Like Xenoblade, I know you have to do, you have to complete some missions. There are open world areas, but in order to get to different open world areas, you need to complete story missions.
yeah. I will say, I yeah, Xenoblade is open world, but many of us don't often describe it as open world, and one of the big reasons why is like maybe like the structure of some of the areas in the maps. But one like weird thing is I don't know if this constitutes as open world or not, but like when you go from one area to another area, there is a loading screen into that other area. So for example, like in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, if you go from like the Hebra region to the Tabantha region, you can just like fly in or glide in. There's
Hmm.
no like loading screens or anything. But in Xenoblade 3, if you go from the Fornis region to the Asia region, it will have a loading screen and transition you in there. And that's what like makes Xenoblade X different from any other game. And it's just crazy that it's on the Wii U because you can go from your hub in New Los Angeles, you can fly in your mech, which is like a giant like robot. It's kind of like a Gundam. You can fly in that mech all the way up north to like the last continent in this planet. And that's just like astonishing it's on the Wii U. But like that's one thing I've noticed. Like one thing that maybe constitutes as open world is like interconnected areas you can like go like in wherever you want, no loading screens, no like um stopping unless you're doing like fast travel. But as you guys said, like sandbox also means like you're plopped in, you kind of have that creativity to do whatever you want. But yeah, in terms of the semantics, it can get a little confusing, but that umbrella term of open world, I feel like can be like put into many different games, but used lightly. Like Xenoblade, I often like say it's like open area or like uh, even more of a broad term. I call it like an adventure RPG because it like reminds me of Zelda in some ways. Like in like Twilight Princess, you're like going from like one section of the map to another section of the map to another. That's sort of like Xenoblade. But I think the best example is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's a game I played this year. It was one of the new 2024 releases. In that game, there are, I think, 6 regions, and each region is like huge. It's like a huge, massive, like open world, open like zone area, akin to like I don't even know if like compared to like a Breath of the Wild zone. Like that's hard to compare, but like they're very big areas with a lot of things to do and a lot of like things to like add onto your map. But you can go from one area to another area unless you progress the story and unlock that area and progress the story, see some scenes, do some things in the story, move that narrative forward. So that's another game where that balance was there. But yeah, sorry if I kind of derailed a bit there.
Oh no,
No,
no.
no, 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 not
I
at all.
think
I mean, yeah, go ahead,
this
John.
overall like the overall consensus between our conversation last week and the comments and everything, it's like nobody really knows what an open world game is or can be.
Yeah. You know
It's
what this
just
reminds me of? Like the umbrella term of open world reminds me of the umbrella term of RPG. Cause like there are some
yeah,
people who are like, oh, if you can role play in any video game is an RPG. I can role play as Snake in Metal Gear Solid. That's an RPG. And I'm like, ah. And then even within the like sub term of JRPG, that's a whole umbrella term because there's so many different kinds of JRPGs. Like the adventure RPG like Xenoblade, which is more open world, kind of with MMO style combat and tactics games, and then turn-based games and strategy games and all that stuff. So yeah, semantics is confusing, but it I remember you guys said this in the last video. It's kind of like in modern gaming now, a game is either like open world or it's linear. There's often very little in between. But yeah, I'm sort of seeing that too. A lot of people like jumping on that open world train, and some succeeding and some not. So yeah.
well, when you hear the term open world, you immediately have like a vision of a game. Like you immediately can picture a game that you've played that they've called open world. I always go to like Assassin's Creed or and those have like a linear storyline,
Yeah.
but they always call them open world. So I think there's everybody has that knows what it is. And when you think of a linear game, you're thinking of games like The Last of Us. Story driven, narrative focused games
Yeah.
that have one set path, God of War, Gears of War, like those
You know what
story
I did
driven
realize actually in the new God of War Ragnarok, it is very linear. It's very story focused, but there are times where the game like puts you in an area and you have like kind of a little bit of freedom to do like other things that you want, explore a bit as well. And I'm like, hey, this is not an open world game by any means, but it feels open world right now.
Yeah, so
But like maybe in the next like 30 minutes, it won't feel open world at all.
that's how I feel with like Mario Odyssey, right? That's not. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call that an open world game. It's like I think they used a term. I think it was like open area or something.
Yeah.
Open.
I actually felt the same way when I played Mario Odyssey because I was like, oh, Zelda did open world, and now it feels like Mario is doing it a little bit too, like going back to what 64 did, but making those areas and maps a bit bigger, and like finding all the moons and not having to go back.
To me, it just sounds like the conversation really goes to more games being a sandbox game, kind of the in between of like linear and open world, but also like sandbox just doesn't sell as well as something as open world. If something is
Yeah.
open world, you get to explore
30 million units.
everywhere.
Breath of the Wild.
What if
30
it's
million units.
Yeah, Elden Ring, Elden Ring,
Breath of the Wild and
the
Elden Ring are sandbox games.
yeah.
well, wait, hold on.
You're wrong
You're saying
about
Breath-
what you're wrong about what a sandbox game is. A sandbox game are games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom where they just like throw you in and you can do whatever you
Okay,
want.
but that's the thing. Like I think hasn't Nintendo said that Breath of the Wild is an open world game? Like it
It's an
wasn't
open
that
air.
the
They
whole
It's
call it
selling?
open air. Open
They
air,
want to
yeah.
feel different because it's open air and you have that like ability to glide, you have that verticality. So
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But still, yeah.
Yeah, and then like Sonic
I
Frontiers came out with Open Zone,
open zone,
which to
yeah.
me is not like open world. That's just like this is an area that is a zone that you can explore, kind of the same thing that you were saying with like Xenoblade, and then
Yeah,
you go to different zones. So
yeah.
that's not like open world either. Like
I think in terms of the sandbox term, a lot of these games could probably be considered a sandbox, specifically like the Zelda games, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdoms could be considered sandboxes. But it would be tough for them to be sold with that moniker or that label. So they're like, "Oh, it's open air. That's what makes it so unique." Instead of like, "Oh, it's like a sandbox, just like any other like Minecraft or this or that or something like that." So giving it that open world term and that kind of flair, it kind of entices it a bit more, which is still like true, but just in like a different way.
yeah, and I'm just thinking like marketing, like maybe sandbox sounds like it's more of a kid game because
Yeah.
kids play in a sandbox.
Yeah. I one thing I wanted to ask you guys, and this was in my notes.
Mhm.
What do you guys this is specifically talking about open world games and not really like the difference between open world and linear. What do you guys think makes open world game content good? Because I had an epiphany this year because I would always like rip on the Horizon games like, "Oh, I don't like that checklist stuff. I don't like that my map is cluttered. I don't like any of that." And then I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And then I heard like no, this is crazy. Before the game came out, everyone was saying, "Oh, it feels like Horizon." I was like, "Oh no, what is Square Enix doing? Like they can't do that." And then I played the game and I was like, "It doesn't really feel like Horizon to me." And then everyone still kept saying, "It feels like Horizon. It feels like Horizon."
Mhm.
And then I like went back and remembered my Horizon experience, and then I realized what is different with these games. Horizon gives you a map with things already on it, and it gives you that map that's already cluttered and already like illegible. You can't read it. You have to like zoom in very closely to like find where exactly you're gonna go. Whereas with a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or specifically Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed, the DLC, which did the open world exploration a little bit differently, which I loved. It was the best kind of open world exploration in the series, in my opinion. Those games give you an empty map, but you find the things yourself. And even if you do find things that'll give you like waypoints, it won't give you like 5 waypoints at once. Like the towers in Rebirth, you go to the towers, it'll give you like 2 or 3 like marks on your map, and they're like, go here, go here, go here. That's it. You have to
Mhm.
find another tower to find all the other things. Or like Breath of the Wild, you find the towers, you go up to the towers, you look in your first person view to find the things that you want, and you put the beacons there.
Hmm.
And like Xenoblade, you find the things yourself in the open world, and then they will be on your map as fast travel points, and you can go back to those. That's what I like an open world doing, because in those games, I look back at my map and I see it's cluttered, but I'm like, oh, I found all this stuff myself. Whereas in the Horizon games or like a Ubisoft games, like it
It's
gives you the
not as
cluttered map already,
satisfying.
and I'm like, I didn't do any of this.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly. I probably even I've used the term checklist multiple times when talking about open world games, and that's exactly how I feel. I think the most recent like open world game I played was Spider-Man 2,
Mm,
and that's another one where I think you might have to unlock like a beacon or something, but then it has all of the like the backpacks and the
yeah,
all the little side missions that you have to
yeah,
complete in that area.
the
Uh,
collectibles.
yeah, yeah. So I don't like that, but I do really enjoy Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, how they did it. They don't put anything on the map, and you just kind of go explore and find it. Same with Elden Ring, like you just find things on your own.
Yeah,
You're not handheld. I like that. That's the way
yeah.
I enjoy it.
But I've also found something in a lot of these games, a very big commonality. Well, of course, I haven't played Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2. I haven't played the Elder Scrolls games, so I don't know about these games. But the two Zelda games, Elden Ring, Rebirth specifically, um, maybe even a bit of Xenoblade. I haven't heard this as much in Xenoblade, but these four games I've heard that they're like near the end, they're like, "Oh, this stuff is getting repetitive, same shrines over again, same Koroks here again." And then for Rebirth it was like, "Oh, same life spring here, same chocobo excavation here." And then Elden Ring it was like same catacomb over here, same boss over here, this that. So I think it is very, very, very difficult to keep that like variety going in these games. But with a lot of these successful ones, I think they pulled it off very well. Because like a lot of these complaints, like sure, things can get repetitive, things can get like boring, but after a while, like you have to realize like what else are they gonna add to all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a hard balance, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to cater to those that are wanting to play the game and like have fun with it, but then you also have to cater to those that are wanting to explore every inch of that map. And those that are going to find like the hidden treasures that the developers were hoping that you would find, or like those little secret moments, For me, I think what I really like about Breath of the Wild is like the shrines, right? Like what the shrines look like. So if you see one out in the distance, like what you were saying, is you can put a little marker on your map to go to that shrine, because I'm like, oh, I found
Yeah.
another one. Even though it's not like a checklist, I found it myself. What I like about Tears of the Kingdom and what they did with the memories in Breath of the Wild are something I think for those that really want an open world game and want to explore every part of that map, because all they give you is a picture, and
Yeah.
that's what you have to go off of to find that memory. uh with Tears of the Kingdom, they give you like the, I don't know, what were they called, like the
Geoglyph,
signs. What were they?
geoglyphs.
Yeah. And so like when you came across one of those, you knew a memory was going to be over there. They were huge, so it took you a while to like find them,
Yeah.
but because it
That
was
that
recognizable.
incentivized you to be up in the sky so you can see
y-
where they were.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then
But
you just get more distracted because you're like, oh, I was looking for the geoglyph, but I just saw this thing out in the
yeah,
distance. I'm gonna go towards that now.
I had a very big problem with the geoglyphs though.
Oh, what was
I
that?
no, the main thing was like if you go to that geoglyph, you will see that specific memory there.
Hmm.
So, like, I
It's
mean,
out of order.
spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom for viewers who haven't played it, but like for me, the second day I played the game, I saw like that one big character death like way earlier than I should
Oh,
have.
okay.
And then I saw like all these things out of order, and I finished that like dragon tier quest line, And then I was like, okay, I have to go back on YouTube and watch this in order because like
Yeah,
this made sense, but it also like didn't make sense. I need to watch it in
Yeah.
order.
they could
And
they could have
that's what I
just
like
had
about
it.
Breath of the Wild because like it the memory system where you're like running around the world trying to find these memories with those pictures, it
Mhm.
worked because those memories weren't telling a linear story. They were just like, this is one instance I had with Zelda. This is another like memory I have with Zelda. This is another like time we did this like arbitrary thing. So it was still telling a story, but it wasn't like an interconnected story. So that's one thing I was a little upset that Tears of the Kingdom did.
Yeah, I think that they
Yeah.
could have just, since you find them, they could have just revealed them in order. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
there was some lore reason as to why those memories are in those specific areas. But I mean, I wouldn't have cared
Yeah.
if I saw them in order based on how I found the tiers.
Yeah. So I remember in the beginning, Impa tells you, oh, if you want to know more about these dragon tears, meet me at the Forgotten Temple. And the Forgotten Temple is like this is when you're in like what is it, Dueling Peaks, Kakariko area. And she's telling you go to the Forgotten Temple, which is like all the way like northwest in Hebra region or Tabantha region or somewhere, right? And I'm like, I don't have time to go there right now. And I completely forgot that she said that. So I went to do all the other dragon tiers. And then in the end, I saw Impa near one of the geoglyphs. And I was like, oh shit, I forgot to go to the Forgotten Temple. And I didn't feel like going there because it was so out of the way. And there was probably going to be like very high level, strong enemies there. And I was like, I'm just starting out the game. I need more hearts and stamina and all that. So when I went there, like way later into the game, maybe like 30, 40 hours in, 80% of the memory's done, I go in and I see that she was like, "Oh, look at these like symbols. This is the order you have to do them." And I was like, "Oh, why did this place have to be in such a out of the place part of the map?" And like that's one thing like which I love about those games. That like you can kind of go anywhere you want. Like if you wanted to, you can go like from the start of the map all the way to like the other side and like Elden region or wherever else you want to go, like right at the start of the game. But if things were just paced better, that whole order of events would just flow a little nicer. And of
Mhm.
course, like these kinds of games don't have like as linear of a story as like a numbered Xenoblade game. But like I'll give you an example. For X, Xenoblade X has a very like it has a more linear story than something like the Zelda games. But it's not as like heavy and as focused on the story as the numbered Xenoblade games. So maybe like for a whole chunk of 30 hours, you can be doing exploration, side content, frontier nav stuff. But whenever you want to continue the story, you can go back to your home base, go into the barracks, and start the story mission. So it's whenever you want, and it'll like progress it linearly. So you won't be missing out on things. It won't be showing you things out of order, and you'll always see the end whenever you see the end, and you'll always see like chapter 5 after chapter 4 and before chapter 6, and but you can do it whenever you want, and you'll still need to like do some prerequisites, whether it's side missions or frontier nav or something like that, but that linear story will be going in order. So that's what I hope the next open air Zelda game really focuses on. Sorry for a little bit of a tangent again, but
No,
yeah.
no, you're good. I mean, like, honestly, with this show in general, we don't really know the answer until we just talk about it, and then maybe we still don't know the answer. But
Maybe
hey, at
one
least
day
we talked
we'll
about it.
research it
Yeah.
beforehand and like
Yeah,
give
maybe we'll
offer
actually
some
do some
value
homework.
to the
Yeah.
listeners, yeah. So they're
Yeah.
just
Um,
us bickering.
What other open world games have you guys delved into other than Zelda, Elden Ring, and um, I guess you guys might have played GTA. I don't have much of a history with the GTA series, but what
I
other
haven't
open world
played
games?
much of GTA. I played a little bit of 4, like in college, and I remember all I did is I went to a bowling alley, like in the game, and just bowled. That's all I
Yeah.
did. Like,
I don't think you played GTA right.
I
yeah,
I played 4 in high school. I borrowed it from one of my friends, and I got pretty far into the story, but I would always like get anxious whenever I would like do something wrong. I was like, oh, I didn't pay the
yeah,
toll.
that moral
I like
compass.
crashed into this light. Oh, the cops are getting me. What do I do?
I
What do I
ran a
do?
red light.
I was like, oh, am
That
I doing this right? And they're like, yeah, you're doing it right. You're playing the game normally. And I was like, oh,
that reminds me of I wonder if I haven't played Fable in a very
yeah.
long time. And Fable, I played a lot of Fable 2, and I think that one was open. You could kind of do whatever you wanted, whenever you want it.
Mhm.
And then there was,
And that, from what I've heard, had like a choice system.
yeah,
So it was
yeah, you
very
could be,
customizable. You can kind of choose what you wanted to do in the story.
yeah, you could be like really good. You could be really evil. It's,
Yeah.
Fable's a cool
Um,
series.
did you wait, I forgot what oh yeah, did you guys ever play the Elder Scrolls games? Like Skyrim or Morrowind or Oblivion?
Yeah, I've played Skyrim. I played it on the Switch. Yeah, I think it was the first time I ever played it.
I thought you were gonna say I was the first one to ever play it
No, it
on
was the first
Switch.
time I ever played it. And yeah, I mean that's definitely open world. Like, you could go wherever you want, and I understand why people love that game so much because of
Can
all
you
the
see
choice you
how Breath
get.
of the Wild inspired it in ways? Or sorry, Breath of the Wild was inspired by
Oh
it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
very open. You could go wherever you want. You can make it, like
Mhm.
any choices that you want. Like, I understand why people love Elder Scrolls and Skyrim. And same with like The Witcher is similar, where you could pretty much go wherever you want, do whatever you want. There is like an
Mhm.
overarching story,
Yeah. It seems like it's more story focused.
but like going back to the games that are like more linear, I played Horizon and I got bored with that game because of the checklist, and I also think the combat's kind of bad. But the
A
checklist
little clunky.
overworld, yeah. I
You
mean
know,
that's
I will say, I know some people who love Horizon a lot, and they love that kind of like style of game. And I was like, oh, if you like Horizon, maybe you should try Zelda. And initially, they were really impressed by Breath of the Wild and like the early shrines and like the physics stuff. But then the lack of story and linear progression and even some of the checklist stuff kind of got to them. They're like, oh, I don't have any direction. I don't know what to do. There's not much to do. Like what you were saying earlier, Cheesy, people are like, oh, there's nothing to do in this open world. And I think having that a little bit of a balance between kind of linearity and a sense of discovery is like the right match for
Hmm.
what games in this style should be looking for. Because like Breath of the Wild's like discovery and non-linearity is like a very rare thing to find in games. Like I can't think of many other games at all that can pull it off and pull it off so well.
Hmm.
But like Horizon to me, like what John was saying, feels too restricting and like there's not much you can like play around with in the combat. You're like forced into the story stuff. This I did not like the side quests in Zero Dawn. I think they're a little bit better in Forbidden West from what I played, but I haven't completed Forbidden West. But I didn't like the side quests in Zero Dawn, and overall it just felt very restricting and kind of like forcing too much at you at times with the checklist and the cluttered map. But I feel like the games I gravitate to a lot now are the games that have a really good balance. Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a huge surprise for me. I did not expect to like that game as much as I did. That was a very nice, welcome surprise. Of course, Xenoblade, I'm very biased in that way, but like X does it very well because it's like a traditional open world. You can fly, run, drive wherever you want, but the side content and the exploration content is very, very well implemented into the area. Like you're either going to be fighting monsters, you're going to be gathering treasure, you're going to be doing side quests, You're going to be finding like their tower equivalents, which is they're called like data probes. And a lot of this stuff is helping you as a character in the game because it's like leveling up your blade rank, it's leveling up your character's level, it's making you stronger, you're fighting more enemies, you're getting more battle points, all that stuff. So if the gameplay loop is integrated well, and if there's a balance, then that's like my kind of game. That's
I
what I've
could
noticed.
I could talk about a game, and this is going to go live after the embargo. I could talk about a game I played last week. I
Yeah.
played Star Wars Outlaws,
Oh,
and I'm actually really excited for that game. I know it's a Ubisoft game, and we know how their open world games tend to be, but this seems like it gives you a lot of choice and a lot of ways to approach each situation.
so it
There,
doesn't feel like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed.
well, it does feel a little bit like Assassin's Creed because there's a lot of stealth there's a lot of stealth missions, but it makes sense because she's just a person. Like
Mm.
she has to sneak around to try to get stuff. But there are different. You could go in stealth. You could go in loud. You could. There's like 3 different factions that you can work with. There's like the Pikes, the Huts, and Crimson. I think it's Crimson Dawn. And like each one of your decisions like makes one of the factions happy but pisses off the other. So I'm really interested to see how, like, if you're going to get different endings depending on how you play that game.
Well, it seems like the Pikes are always getting screwed over, so that's just gonna happen no matter what. What, you didn't get that?
No,
Just
I
in the
didn't get it.
in the show, or like in the Clone Wars or Rebels, like the Pikes, their spice is
I
always being
mean,
stolen.
Oh yeah.
well,
I
the
don't
Pikes are
remember
they're a crime syndicate. You know
Yeah.
how bad? Why would you feel bad for them?
I mean, yeah, true. Anyway, I think what you were saying, Nishquick, is like at the end of our episode, we basically just said the open world game is just life. Like you got to step outside, and that is your open world game. But it's interesting how many people are so like turned off to the idea or are nervous about the idea of playing an open world game that doesn't tell them what to do, because that's our life. Like we wake up, we go to work,
we make our own
we
choices.
yeah, we make our own choices.
Yeah.
And
What I
and
what I
not that
yeah.
not that that is your story. Your story is like the side quests and the things that you get to do outside of the normal day activities.
You know what I've heard some people say, which is kind of a valid like point that they make. They're like, "Oh, after like a long day of work or like a long day of school, after like doing so much, I just want to come back to a game where I don't have to like think too much." Or like it just kind of like guides me in the right direction, tells me what I need to do, and I still feel accomplished, which is
Hmm.
valid. But in terms of like other kinds of experiences, like figuring out your own direction, figuring out your own pathway, like finding secrets in a world is also equally, if not more, rewarding and enjoyable. But to me, like a lot of that stuff is enjoyable now, but I've been like binging so many RPGs this past like 2 or 3 years now. And now for me, like I used to like many people like can't believe this, but in the past I used to be more of a gameplay focused gamer. I used to be like, oh, if this gameplay loop doesn't hook me, then I'm not gonna be
Nintendo
into it.
fan.
And I used to go so far as to say like I don't mind if a story has like or a game has a minimal story and like a like okay story, but that gameplay loop, if it's there, then I'm gonna be hooked on it. But now I've been like playing a lot of games that the story is what keeps me coming back. I'm like, I need to know what happens to these characters next. I need to know where the story is gonna go. I need to know how this connects to that and like what
Hmm.
all this stuff means that they've hinted at this part in the game earlier on. And on top of that, the like if the gameplay system is good, the combat system is good, if the music is really good, then that's what's also going to keep me coming back to those games. So if there's like a good balance, then that's good. But I've been noticing that what's pushing me to come back to a game now is more of the story stuff than the gameplay stuff. But like I said before, like those two Zelda games, the Souls games, that goes for outside of Elden Ring because I'm not huge on Souls lore and Dark Souls stories and stuff. I'm an anomaly in that. I know a lot of people love that stuff. I couldn't even tell, like I spent like 140 hours in Elden Ring. I couldn't even tell you the story of
No,
it.
I
So like
agree. I'm the same way. I just get a bit. I don't even do anything with the different builds. I just get a big
yeah.
sword and whack. You know.
Yeah, if you find your right build, then you're good. Like, even like Bloodborne, like I know John, you love Bloodborne a lot. Like recently, I beat Old Hunters this year, which I was very proud of myself that I finally did. And I thought to myself in the end, I was like, I still don't really understand the story. And like with Bloodborne, I understand the story more than the other Dark Souls games and Elden Ring, but still I'm like that is one part of this game that I'm just like completely oblivious towards. But the gameplay and the combat is so good that I'm willing to like just not care about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You're fighting like I don't know the why. I've beat Bloodborne like 5 times or whatever you had to do to get all the endings,
Yeah.
and I don't know what that story is. There's like a moon monster at some point. There's a guy in a wheelchair. Like who knows?
Yeah.
They're all beasts.
Yeah,
No, that
there's a red moon that comes down and this lady in a dress is like crying about it and all
yeah.
that. What is
There's this
I
guy
want to
with a
get
cage on
to
his head.
yeah.
I want to get to some of the comments that we have.
Mhm.
Like Michael Craig Seth on YouTube says, I always preferred linear games. I enjoy my 20 to 30 hour games or less. I usually waste my time with open world. Then I get bored and stop playing. I just prefer games to be games, which that's a
What's that?
interesting
That's
thing
a
to say
hot take. What
at
does
the end of
that
the,
mean?
like, if open world games aren't games. But no, I mean, I get what they're saying because I'm kind of the same way. Like, I just want more of a linear story. And then we have DT7353 says Zelda wasn't linear. Just because I have to go to the fire temple next doesn't mean I
Yeah.
have to do it now. In Final Fantasy X, for 90% of the game, your only option is to go forward to the
Yep.
next town or a cutscene. That's
You know,
linear.
I was actually thinking about that when I listened to last week's episode. I was like, yeah, Ocarina of Time, when you're in Hyrule Field, like when you first like enter Hyrule Field after you talk to Kippura Gibora, you could go to Lon Lon Ranch, Kakariko Village, Gerudo Valley. You don't have to go to Hyrule Castle. And
Mhm.
even after learning Zelda's Lullaby coming out, you don't have to go to Kakariko Village. You can go wherever you want in that like area of the game that you're in. And of course, like you're still like restricted from like going forward in Gerudo Valley. You can't like go around much in Lake Hylia and like some other places, but you're still able to go to those places. But to progress the story, you might have to go to other places. And I think even in the adult part of the game, um, when you move forward 7 years in the future, you can do some dungeons out of order. I think it only needs to be Forest Temple first. Um, I think Water and Shadow can be swapped. I'm not entirely sure about that. I know the order is usually Forest, Fire, Water, Shadow, Spirit. I know somewhere in there you can like swap them around. And yeah, so there's still some like non-linearity in those games and like that person was talking about Final Fantasy X, but if you look at like Final Fantasy 7 and 9 because I 10 is the next game I'm going to play. I'm going to play that. Like I have options of where to play it on, but I might like boot up the old PS2 and play it on there. But I I have played 7 and 9 this year, and with those games, it's similar to like a Xenoblade or like a traditional Zelda, where you do a bit of like a major story part, but then if you go into the world map, your world map is like you can go wherever you want. But what I like about those games and even some like other modern games is unlike um, some games where you're just like restricted from areas, you have this entire world map, but maybe you can't go to this other part of the map because you don't have the right vehicle, or you don't have like the right boat, or you don't have the right like animal to ride, like your chocobo or something. Like for example, in like 7, you start off just running around, then eventually you have a buggy where you can like go over like rocky terrain and enter other areas of the world map. And then you get a boat where you can like go into the water and enter other areas of the world map. And then eventually you end the game. Most like classic Final Fantasy games end with you entering the airship and you can go wherever you want on the map. So that kind of like giving you like bits of transportation to unlock other areas in this already existing world that you're in. That's another cool um, thing about like open world games that aren't actually open world games. And like
Mhm.
another example is like Epona in Ocarina of Time. Whenever you get her, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, I know. So Depitzi said, "I prefer linear games as long as they are straightforward. Otherwise, be open world and be open, not open, but with only one right way. So I could get lost and waste hours figuring out how to progress. I'm an adult, so time to play and beat games are more valuable. So linear is better than open world, in my opinion." And then Flea said, I think it seemed fairly clear by the end that there's no solid consensus on what exactly defines an open world game. And the way the episode itself ended was fairly humorous. I really liked Breath of the Wild, and that felt like an open world game, but I would have trouble actually defining what that is. To me, I guess it just seems like you're able to freely explore the world, and there's no super string something time limit on it, nor is the game sectioned or blocked off to you until you achieve.
Stringent.
I, I don't know how to read. Until you achieve certain story points. My first playthrough of Breath of the Wild was roughly 116 hours, and the only reason why I finished it was because I felt like I had done just about everything. So I went to the end and rolled credits. There certainly was a main storyline and a main quest to follow, but at no point did the game actually force me to do any of it, nor did it block my access to parts of the world because of it, with the exception of needing to achieve the glider before actually releasing me out to the wild, so to speak. But that was more just like a glorified tutorial, really. There are many great games where you can freely wander in the open world, including many RPGs. Final Fantasy comes to mind. Even in Final Fantasy 1, you could wander around and explore the world, and it wasn't until you stumbled upon the thing that progressed the story. Would the story progress and the world would be open up wider to you? Was that an open world game? I would argue no, because while you can wander in the world at points, it's highly blocked off to you as to funnel you through the story. Whereas the game like Breath of the Wild, the whole world is open to you and it's completely on your own timeline as to when you want to advance the story or even complete it.
That was a
So,
novel.
I
That was a
mean,
novel.
yeah, but I didn't want to leave Flea out, because I guess I
Yeah,
left
because you
some
always forget
stuff out
about
last
Flea.
time.
You always forget about him.
I don't always forget about Flea. Anyway, uh,
I
yeah, I
have
mean,
one. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying
No, no,
I
no.
have one extra thing. I did a
Okay,
poll on my YouTube channel, and I asked, do you
okay.
prefer open world games or linear games? I actually had 250 votes, and it's
Ooh.
70% prefer open world games
Hmm.
Interesting.
to linear. That is
70?
interesting. 70%.
70?
It's interesting
Wow,
because like my channel is a Nintendo focused channel, so you would think they would prefer, unless it's all Breath of Wild fans and
Yeah.
Xenoblade fans.
Yeah.
But like, there's Mario's not open, Kirby's not open, Metroid's not open.
Mario, Pikmin.
Except for maybe that is the problem, is that the younger generation or your younger audience doesn't really understand what an open world game is. So maybe they are considering something like Mario Odyssey being open world.
Yeah, I've just like the RPG example earlier. I see a lot of people miscategorize games as open world, just like how they miscategorize games as RPG, just because they're like, oh, I can like, oh, this area is so big, or like, oh, this city is so big, it feels like an open world game, and I'm like, oh, really? This is just like a big like city in like a RPG or something. But also, I don't know if you guys have heard of this. There are complaints about games, and I'll name a few which you guys have also mentioned in like the last episode. There are complaints about games that are specifically linear, and people want them to be open world. I remember that was the case with Final Fantasy 16 because like that game is very, very linear. Like you can do like side quests like out of order and like in between like big story beats. You can do side quests, run around like in bigger scale areas that aren't open world at all, but they're like just areas.
Mm-hmm.
But then people are like, "Oh, I want it to be open world. I want more freedom. I want it to be like this." And then when Rebirth came out, they're like, "Oh, this is what I wanted Final Fantasy to be. This is what I wanted 16 to be." And I'm like, 16 was never trying to be like a Rebirth. It was trying to be like a more structured, story-focused, linear game. I did have my problems with it, but like it's like structure maybe wasn't one of the bigger problems I had with it. The pacing was all over the place. I didn't like the story pacing of that game, but like it was very strange that I was hearing people like criticize it for being linear when that was what it was trying to be.
Wait,
Yeah,
one
I mean,
was 15. 15 was open, wasn't it?
15 was open world. Yes, I think that was their first attempt at an open world Final Fantasy. I haven't
So
tried that one yet.
maybe that's why, you have
Yeah.
15 and then, they go to a different approach for 16. I mean, I understand why people don't like 16. It's like a cutscene after it's like
Yeah.
2 minutes. It's like 2 minutes of gameplay, cutscene for 10 minutes, 2 minutes of gameplay, cutscene for another 10, 15 minutes.
What I didn't like is you do one of like the most amazing, crazy, badass, like most epic boss fights you've ever experienced. You like go to space, like blow up this thing in space, fight this like dragon in space, you come back down, and then the next thing you're doing is you're like doing a freaking fetch quest, which is mandatory. I'm like, no, I want to ride the high of like fighting a dragon in space, please. The pacing of that game was just not very good at all. Yeah.
I mean, I hope so. If we're thinking about games that are linear that I would love to see as open world, like an open world Metroid game would be awesome. And it would actually get people to buy it.
Yeah. Have you guys played Halo Infinite and played the
Yes.
campaign of that?
Yes.
Okay, so what was that like? Because a
That
lot of people
was
are like, "Oh, what if Metro Prime 4 was like Halo Infinite?" I don't think it will be based on what we saw, but
I enjoyed the Halo Infinite story, like, with the campaign. I liked being able to explore this whole large open world and do missions at your own pace. It had its own, it had story beats that you had to do before going other places, but they gave you like a grappling hook where you could just kind of zoom around. But yeah, if they did something like that for Metroid, that would be awesome. And Cheesy, don't nod your head at me. The article said that Metroid Prime Beyond is like 28th out of 30 as most anticipated games in Japan.
okay. What does that have to do with it
that is
being open
Japan
world?
though.
Because Metroid games don't sell. And,
Okay, but-
and if they are open world, it would 70% of people like open world games.
I will say.
Do you know
about
how many
Metroid,
people already get lost in Metroid games?
Well, they need to
I,
get
And you
good.
have to
I feel like in
backtrack.
open
Don't
world-
say you have to get good. There's people that just don't know where they're going.
Cheesy, you could not say people. You could just say I don't know where I'm going, and I get lost all the time. So I need it to be more linear.
Did you beat it?
I did Metroid Dread. Yeah,
Yeah.
I beat
Okay.
Metroid Dread. I beat Metroid Prime when I was younger.
So you're allowed to talk about it then?
Yes,
Okay.
I do like Metroid, but I want people to buy it.
I think opening up the appeal to Metroid is always great. I'm just like I don't know how that game would fit in an open world setting. Because like the whole idea of Metroid is it being a Metroidvania, which has like backtracking.
Elden Ring's
puzzle
that way
solving.
though. Elden
Yeah.
Ring's kind of like that.
Yeah, Elden Ring is, and yeah, I was like, how is a Dark Souls game going to translate to open world? Well, the thing is, Elden Ring has a Metroidvania DNA in the legacy dungeons. In the open world feels like Breath of the Wild. The legacy dungeons feel like a Dark Souls game or a level in a Dark Souls game. So that's where Elden Ring kind of straddled that line of still being a Souls experience and having that Metroidvania level structure. With Metroid, it's like that's its like DNA. So if they have bigger open areas, like I've been like watching some of Andres Restart's Metroid Prime 4 videos, and he always says like if they do like a Xenoblade-esque bigger style area thing, they can do that, but still keep the corridors, still keep the interconnectedness, still keep that Metroidvania backtracking feel. So if they want to be bigger, they can still be bigger, but still keep the DNA, you know? What do you think?
I mean, I agree with that. The corridors was something that I was thinking of because that is how you advance the rest of the games is you have to have like either the special beam or the missiles or whatever it is to open up the corridor. But if it's open world, then you don't necessarily need them.
Yeah.
Or there will be areas where you do need them and you have to go get it first. It's not that you're not thinking big picture here.
I am thinking big picture, and that's the problem. I think if it's too big, people won't want to play a Metroid
30
game where
million
they have to backtrack.
units. Breath of the Wild sold 30 million units.
That's Breath of the Wild.
And the most
That's not Metroid.
the most Zelda game had sold before was like 7 million. They tried something new and it worked. They could do it again.
I'm kind of siding with Cheesy on this one.
Thank you. See,
Well, I'm glad we're not going to get a Metroid Prime 5 because you guys don't want it to be open world. This is the last. This is the last. This is the last hurrah.
People are, yeah, open world games do sell, but many games don't have to be open world to be successful. And it just depends on the genre, depends on the style of the game.
How many entries of
Depends on
Metroid
the
games have we
appeal.
had though? And they haven't. They haven't like broken through, right? They have. It's just the
they've
same.
been doing better. They've been doing better
Like,
than
Not,
They
but
have
it's
to do
not.
better.
It's not what they. That's not what they want. They don't want a 3 million seller. That's 1-2 Switch numbers. They want 10 million plus.
I think you're just wrong on that.
I don't know if that's what they're like. We don't know what Nintendo wants for Metroid, and we don't know if Metroid Prime 4 selling 4 to 5 million is them going to like cancel the series. But what I will say is, like, yeah, 10 million plus will be amazing for the series, but there are other ways where I don't want to transition this over to like a Metroid sales discussion, but I think there are many other ways that they can broaden the appeal for this series other than making it open world. Because like there are a lot of games that are just like snapping their fingers and be like, let's make the next one open world. We're gonna make this one open world. I always I always okay, I'm gonna get a little heated here, but like I always love like criticizing Pokemon because it deserves it. It really deserves it. And that is one example of something that like it was like, oh, let's do open world, oh, it's gonna sell. And it sold. But at what cost? At what cost? What was the cost of selling so much and going open world? Sonic Frontiers, I don't know exactly how well that did, like sales wise, but critically, there was problems with the game. There were things that people didn't like. It was kind of janky and kind of broken in some instances. It wasn't a very smooth transition to open world. But I can't think of any other like like Final Fantasy 15. From what I heard, it was a decent game, but it was also riddled with a lot of problems. Their first like really successful open world was Rebirth. And then I'm trying to like think of other like instances where a game has transitioned to open world. Has it been like successful or unsuccessful? Well, Elden Ring has been. Zelda has definitely been. Like I don't feel like every single franchise needs that open world kind of magnum opus
I'm
because
gonna,
No,
I'm
because
gonna, I'm
may
gonna push
not
back on the
be.
Pokemon thing because what did it? You said what did it cost? I think it's actually gonna help us. Their next game, they are not gonna release something in that state again.
Um, I hope that was a really big wake up call for them. I was so sad because I was so close to pre-ordering the game. I was like, hey, this is kind of like looking good. Like this might get me back into the series. Like this is kind of like giving me like the Pokemon like feelings that I got when I was a kid. And then I saw like the opening like weekend footage of the game, and I was like, this cannot be real. This cannot
I,
be the reality that I'm like
I think
witnessing right
Pokemon's
now.
gonna be fine. They almost had more revenue
Yeah,
than Nintendo,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
so I think they'll be fine.
I love to like get on Game Freak and like really criticize them because like look at Monolith Soft. Look at what they're doing. Like they're
I think we're gonna be
in
pleasantly surprised with the next Pokemon game.
I hope so. The thing is, like, I really hope so. I'm going to be hypercritical of ZA and Gen 10. Like, hypercritical. If it's, like, of course, it may just be, like, a small, like, bump up above Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus. But, like, if it doesn't, like, look and play well, and if it's not, like, a new breath of fresh air for the series, then I don't know what else to say. I think I don't know. Because, like, again, like, look at Monolith Soft, which is maybe not significantly smaller, but in terms of capital and resources, they don't have as much like capital as like Game Freak and Pokemon Company. But like think about the games that they put out on the Switch and like the schedule at which they do like Xenoblade 2 2017, Torna 2018, Definitive Edition 2020, Xenoblade 3 2022, Future Redeem 2023, even before that, 2015 Xenoblade X, and like 6 games kind of like back to back, while also working on Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3, and then Pokemon companies like fumbling around trying to like figure out what HD game development is. I'm like, that's why I really like to like criticize them, so that I'm like, please learn, please learn. Like don't make the Switch look bad, because people use that as an example. They're like, this is why we need a Switch 2, and I'm like, no, stop, no, that's not that's not true.
yeah. Yeah. When you can have games like Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch,
Run sub
uh,
30. The game runs like trash. You can't say
Tears of
it
the
doesn't.
Kingdom.
Yo, yeah.
Johnny, I'm done. I'm done with you, man.
Like
I'm
I
done.
love the game, but it runs horribly. It
Wait,
chugs.
I don't remember having that many frame drops on Tears of the
Yeah.
Kingdom.
If
I mean,
you
I did. Oh, Fire Temple was kind of crazy, but yeah.
and then like Breath of the Wild's pretty much broken in the Lost Woods. We need a Switch too. Like it's 8 years. It's been 8 years.
Yeah.
We need a Switch too.
I'll
There's
say
no.
I was just so heartbroken and so like so disillusioned when Pokemon sold 20 million in a weekend, and Xenoblade didn't even like hit 2 million that year. I'm
I
like,
think
what do you guys want? What do you guys want?
Pokemon.
Switch
that's
Nostalgia.
owners,
that's
what do you want?
yeah, that's the IP.
Yeah, I was just like, and everyone's like, oh, Pokemon's open world, it's open world. And I'm like, oh my God. Do you guys understand?
You
That
have
was that
to
was
you
a
have to
crazy
admit
time.
Xenoblade is a high barrier of entry.
It is a higher barrier of entry, but when it comes to like people wanting like a technical like showpiece, that's one you gotta look out for.
I
That's one
just like
series you gotta look.
catching
Yeah.
monsters, and hopefully sometimes they're different colors than the other ones.
Yeah.
You know,
I will say when it
it's
comes to like the learning curve for Xenoblade, it's often like what's the word? It's often m- kind of overinflated how difficult it is sometimes. Well, I will say some of the games don't have very good tutorials, but there are also very good online tutorials to help with that. But the other games have very simple enough and easy enough to follow tutorials. And once you kind of like learn things, once things are slowly introduced to you, because everything isn't introduced to you at once. Maybe like a few hours into the game, you might get a new mechanic. Maybe many more hours into the game, you might get another mechanic. So things are kind of paced out, just like the story and the side content. The gameplay mechanics are kind of paced out, so you don't feel overwhelmed. And then once the whole picture is there, then you're kind of like, oh, this is how this all fits together, and it works. So yeah.
So, Nishquick, with this conversation and kind of wrapping things up, after talking about it, do you prefer linear or open world? Because I think I know your answer just based off of what you had to say today.
It's tough because like back when I was like playing Breath of the Wild for the first time and my hype train phase towards Tears of the Kingdom, I was like really into open world games. Like I was playing those, Elden Ring, I was playing Ghost of Tsushima and all those. So I was probably in an open world mood then. But right now I'm finding like a pleasure in linear games because back then I was like, "Oh, I hate when games are too restricting." But then I played games like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy and like other like RPGs which are a lot more linear, more story focused and I'm like, "Oh, if it's paced nicely and if it has a lot of things to do along the way, then it's still good." But my ideal kind of gameplay experience is the balance between both. Like a numbered Xenoblade Chronicles, maybe even Xenoblade Chronicles X or like a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. If there's more experiences like that where you can explore quite a bit, you can like you have a lot more freedom, but there's still like a structured story. There are times like in those story beats where you are a little more restricted and have that balance and that's good. I enjoy that.
Johnny, what do you prefer?
I prefer Vampire Survivor likes.
So,
I got another one. It's called Nerd Survivors. It's Vampire Survivors, but with nerds.
like the candy?
No, like us. There's a person called Johnny in there, and that's who I use.
Oh, okay.
But
Makes
no,
sense.
I don't know. I prefer games like Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, but I don't like the checklist open world games. I don't
Yeah,
beat any game, so it doesn't matter.
right. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I prefer a sandbox game because
Um,
I just think that kind of gives you the best of both worlds, like what you're kind of looking for. So I don't know if we really like figured out what an open world game is, or if that is just kind of open,
Open to
open
interpretation.
for discussion.
it's
Yeah,
an
exactly.
open word, the
It's
open
an open
world.
word. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, like the semantics can like jumble things around, make things more confusing.
yeah,
But it is a big umbrella term and many things can be classified within that umbrella term, just like
Yeah.
RPGs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nishquick, thank you so much for being on. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it and all of your
Yeah.
love for Xenoblade and Final Fantasy. And just as a reminder, where can people find you
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
internet?
Thank you guys for having me on Communication Error. It's been great to chat about this topic, which I was very excited to talk about. But yeah, you can find me at Nishquikpops on YouTube, Nishquikpops on Twitter and Instagram. I haven't been active on Instagram, but I'm very active on Twitter. And like I said before earlier in the show, me and my friend Kevin, the protagonist, we have a Xenoblade centric and Xenocentric podcast called the Conduit Cast. It should be in my Linktree bundle, but if you can't find it, just look up Conduit Cast on YouTube and you'll find it. Yeah, I talk about Nintendo, JRPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles, Zelda, Final Fantasy, Persona, a lot of those kinds of games on my channel. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Johnny, where can people find you?
I'm Johnny Bo everywhere: Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, the Nintendo Powercast, and yeah, I think that's it.
You can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Nintendo Powercast at CheezyC64, CheezyC64. Nishquick, you have any closing thoughts?
Um, Play Xenoblade Chronicles. It's amazing and it'll change your life. Yeah.